and welcome back to another video. Today I wanted to build some more and create something outstanding. So I decided I wanted to make a viewpoint, and I'll explain a little bit more about that later. But for now, let me show you the area for this build. So I want to build it here in the back part of my island because I wanted this to embrace the natural part of my island. I also want this build to be fairly big, so I cleared out a big chunk of space just in case I need it. There isn't really anything else to say, so let's get started. So I'm starting here in this big empty space and I'm opening up the Island Designer app. I then started to construct the cliffs, and to be honest, I didn't really know what I was going to be doing. I just had kind of a vision of making a viewpoint, but I wasn't sure how I wanted to construct the cliffs and how I wanted to build them. So I was kind of going freely on this. So the first thing I tried to do was plan out a shape for the viewpoint. I started by constructing a rectangular shaped cliff so I could see how big I wanted it to be. And then I wanted to add the designs and curves to the shape to make it feel more natural. So for the next couple of minutes, I'm building up the cliffs. So I'll come back and explain the next part once I'm finished constructing the cliffs. After I finished with the cliffs, I decided I wanted to add some water features on top of it. I remember watching island tours about those really terraformed islands, and I took inspiration from that, and I decided I wanted to terraform kind of like that on my natural part of my island, except it's not going to be the same because I'm not that good at terraforming. So my waterscaping is probably not going to be as mind-blowing or as beautiful as theirs, but I still think it looks nice. I decided I wanted to use the water as dividers for two different sections. The first section was going to be a viewpoint, and it was going to face outwards because of, well, the view. And for the second half, I wasn't really sure what to put there at that moment. I was thinking maybe I would just put trees there and make it more of a forest, or maybe I would make it a hiking trail. But both ideas were kind of a stretch because there wasn't a lot of room or space. But later I came up with a much better idea, and you'll see later what that is, but no skipping. And as you can see, while I was waterscaping, I tried to put a step there. I was thinking maybe you can hop across the river like as a step, but I decided not to keep it there, and if you wanted to get to the other section, you're going to have to hop across the diagonal section. Then I expanded the cliffs to be a little bit bigger so then the viewpoint would be longer, and you would be able to see more. Also, speaking of a viewpoint, I wanted to decorate this bottom section a little bit more because I felt like the viewpoint didn't really have that much of a view. I mean, there is that winter section that I built in my last video, but besides that, everything else is kind of bare, so I wanted to decorate that part a little bit more. And now I'm starting to decorate. I'm starting with the viewpoint. Yes, this is the viewpoint, this little sliver, but actually, if you take out your camera, like the camera app, you're able to see a lot of things from down below, so that's good. But I didn't want to make it too crowded because I wanted it to be really accessible, but still have the little items that would make it look good. And once again, I'm extending the cliff because I decided this is where I want my incline to be. I like it when the inclines are snug between cliffs because it feels like the cliffs are railings for the incline instead of the incline just floating there where you can fall. But that's just in real life, not Animal Crossing. I don't think you can fall off of inclines in Animal Crossing. But now I'm figuring out a path for the viewpoint area. I'm also trying to use as much in-game path as I can on this island. I didn't use nearly as enough on my last island, so it didn't really show up on the map. I want it to show up on the map as much as I can, even if it's little speckles. I still want it to show up on the map because it will look a lot more full than having blank empty areas. I also want to keep these parts as natural as I can because using items don't always necessarily look the best. I mean, sometimes if you're doing a specific aesthetic like city core, you're gonna have to use those items and those city elements. But for this back area, I want to keep it as natural as I can. So the less items, the better, unless they fit with the natural theme. I was also super picky about my design choices for some reason. Like the jam jars had to be swapped around. Now that I look back at it, it doesn't really matter. I mean, I guess it does, but it doesn't matter a whole lot. I guess I had a preference back then, but now that I look at it, it doesn't really matter. Also, to be honest, I kinda like the jam jars where it was before. Also, once I placed that final decoration, I moved to this section where I moved some things because I want it to be walkable and that bunny was kind of in the way. But I still liked it and I wanted to place it in this build, so I just placed it right here next to the telescope. Still visible, but now the path is accessible. And now I'm working on the back section. I decided to make a little mini farm, which now that I think about it doesn't make any sense. While I was making this build, I had an idea of making a farm, and I thought it was a super good idea, but it doesn't make any sense because of the farm right next to it. So it doesn't make sense, but I guess it doesn't need to. I planted all 6 different crops, which is nice that they made 6 plants and not 5, but I still feel like there are some crops that they could have included that would make huge differences, like, I don't know, cucumbers? I don't know, or maybe like lettuce or something like that. I was thinking about this the other day and which crops they could have included that would have made some big differences, but I forgot them all. Leave a comment down below on which crops you would have liked to see. added to this game. Also, speaking of crops, I really like the cooking aspect of the game, but some of the dishes, at least when you're making it, doesn't really make sense. Like, who puts salt and pepper in their cake? That doesn't make any sense. While you're making it, I think you put like salt and pepper in your cake. And also, this is the point in the build where I get stuck in this little corner and I had to call up rescue services, but at least I got the job done. Then I fenced off this farm because I want this to be more of a personal farm and less of a wild farm. Like, does that make sense? Or like more of a community farm, because I already have one and it's right next to the personal farm. And I also want this to be Lily's personal farm, and you'll see what I mean by that later. And now I'm extending the cliffs once again. I promise this is the last time I deal with the cliffs, I think. This was the time when I had the amazing idea to make a cabin. Yes, that was the idea I was teasing about, but I thought it was a better idea than making a forest or a hiking trail. So I moved Lily's house, and I moved Lily's house because I didn't know who else to move. And at that time, I thought she wasn't living in the neighborhood, but turns out she was. So I ended up moving Judy's house in replacement of hers. And Judy was the only villager that didn't have a dedicated spot, so it worked out at the end, but now all my villagers are settled. When I went to move the villager's house, you may have seen some changes. So in between the footage of going to move Lily's house and the footage before that, I decided I didn't want to record anymore. Like, I still wanted to build, but I just didn't want to record for some reason. I just didn't feel like it halfway through. So I decorated the entire bottom section and without filming it. But I guess it's fine because the entire video is based on making this viewpoint, but it's still a little bit infuriating, you know? I then expanded the cliffs a little bit more because I decided I wanted to put the cabin on this second section. So I needed it to expand a little bit more because the space was a little bit tight. And I also wanted to add some other features to this area. I wasn't exactly sure how I wanted the space to be on the other side, so I decided that after I placed down Lily's plot, I was going to build the rest of the cliff. So I did, and I placed her plot down and it was built the next day. Here's her house after it has been moved and built. I know it's not exactly her style, but I really wanted a villager's exterior to be a cabin, so I just randomly chose Lily. But her interior is probably going to stay the same. It's just the exterior that looks a little bit different. Next, I was trying out paths for her house. I thought maybe I could use the in-game path, but it just doesn't look right. So I did end up using custom designs and using the frosted path. This is when I started to decorate the right side of Lily's house. I used these custom designs, which are these really realistic stones, and it gave off kind of a surrounding for the campfire that I placed in the middle. While I was building this little section, I was thinking that it would give off vibes of a scene from Zelda Breath of the Wild. If you don't know what Zelda Breath of the Wild is, it is a video game, and it came out before Animal Crossing. I think it came out when the Nintendo Switch was released. Zelda Breath of the Wild is actually my favorite video game. I know, you would probably think it's Animal Crossing, but it's actually Zelda. I don't know why, it's just such a beautiful game. Zelda is one of those games, if you play it twice, you don't get that same feeling as you played it the first time. But enough about that. Let me talk about what this little area that I built is. So as I mentioned this before, I built this area inspired by the scene from Zelda Breath of the Wild. So Zelda Breath of the Wild is more of an open world game where you can go and explore and do things at your own pace. There is this one section in the map, and I think it's called the Hebrew Mountains. Most of the Hebrew Mountains just contain snow and ice and like trees and more natural things. But occasionally you will see some sort of shelter in the Hebrew Mountains. And I don't remember exactly what they are, but I do remember this one time while I was exploring the Hebrew Mountains, there was this cabin. I don't remember where this cabin was, but it included, when you went in, it included like food, and it had a book. And in the book was a recipe and like a note. I don't remember what it said. I think it was like, if you find this shelter, you could take the food or something like that. That's what I remember. So that's what I took inspiration for that little section. Also, on the outside there was a little bench with the fireplace, so that's why there was a fireplace. And the food was in the barrel, so that's why there's a barrel there. And now I'm waterscaping a little bit more. And originally I made this really weird shape, but eventually I got it to the shape of, I think, 2 semicircles or 2 circles diagonal from each other. I don't know if that makes sense while explaining it, but when I'm finished building it, you'll see. Also, can I acknowledge upon editing this that I accidentally switched up the footage? Like, I mixed up the decorating from the right side with the building on the left side, so I'm super sorry about that. But I guess that means you just saw a glimpse of the future. Except it's not really a glimpse because you just saw the entire decorating process of the right side, but it's okay. Just ignore that there's nothing on the right side right now. I also think I got this mixed up because when I finished making this little pond, I started decorating the right side of the house, and then I went back to this section, so I think that's why I got it mixed up. And here's the shape that I was talking about, kind of 2 circles diagonal from each other. But I'm starting to decorate the pond. I placed a fishing rod and a fishing rod stand, and I thought that looked really good. And I customized that to be more of the natural color because I'm trying to keep this back part natural. I already mentioned that so much. But I also wanted to keep this lake natural as well, so I used a lot of plants and greenery and more browns as well. And then I thought it was really cute to add a little frosted pond and a little duck on top of it, especially that little brown duck because it matches with the plant, and I thought that was a really nice detail. And now I'm adding the final item, which is a bunny. I placed custom designs on the bottom, and then I placed a little bunny on top, and I thought it looked so cute. And then I'm placing the final thing, which is this incline. I chose the log staircase because I liked how it looked in the winter and how it looked the most natural. I was thinking of using the natural staircase, but I used it so much that I thought it would have been a better idea to use this one. And this is the final look of the viewpoint. If we go up this log incline and hop across the river, we come to this little cabin, and it gives off a lot of cozy vibes, and I think this is a really cute hidden fact and hidden secret. And then if we hop across the river once again, we come to this little view, which has a picnic in the view and has other little cozy areas, and it also gives off a glimpse of this little winter area that I decorated in my last video. So I hope you enjoyed this video. I really enjoyed how this looked, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!